Well, David Culley is the new head coach of the Houston Texans. We're excited that he is here in town. Coach, great to meet you. We heard from you in the press conference about who you are as a person. We heard from all the players and coaches that you brushed up against over the last 3 or 4 decades about who you are as a guy. But tell us, who are you as a football guy? What can we expect Texans-wise with this offense and with this defense this year coming up?
Well, first of all, we're going to have players that are smart, tough, selfish, and all about being a Texan. That's the first thing they're going to be. Offensively, we're going to be a team that's basically going to be very flexible. You may see something one week that you may not see the next week, but we're going to be flexible. We're going to be an offense that's going to be an offense with Deshaun that will be an offense that you may not have seen last week, but it's flexible enough that people are going to have to defend us. You're going to have a defense that's going to be aggressive, attacking, that's going to do the right things, that's going to make people kind of lose their will a little, if I may say. And then you're going to have a special teams that is going to be as good as any in this league. That being said, Drew, it takes all 3 phases to be successful in this league. And all three phases work together. You know, that's what they call situational football at times, or complementary football. You know, sometimes maybe the offense may not be doing quite well right now. And, you know, but what you're going to have is you're going to have a football team that is going to be that's going to try to play every week winning football. In other words, what I'm saying there is this: winning football means is we're not going to be a football team that gives teams gifts. We're going to be a football team that the most important thing about football is the football. So that being said, as a player, especially on offense, is not to give that football to somebody else. You to be able to protect that football. So that's the most important thing for an offense, whoever touches that football, to make sure it's ours. If we got to go 3 and out and punt it, we're good. We haven't hurt ourselves. We're going to be on the defenses now. That is going to be the complete opposite. You're going to be a defense that's going to try to take that ball away. There's a defense that understands how the importance of the offense is trying not to give it away, but you take it away. And special teams wise, when they go out on the football field, you'll see guys that are playing offense and defense that are going to go down there, and you're going to think right here that those guys think that they're the most important people on the field. And you know what? When they're out there, they are. Drew, that being said, what you're going to see is you're going to see a football team covering each other's butt.
All right. You know, you mentioned in your press conference that you're at heart a teacher, and that's, you know, your passion, and you're teaching the game of football. How important is that as you assemble this staff of assistants and coordinators, that they're teachers as well? I asked this of Nick Caserio about a month ago in this sort of same situation, but how important will the teaching aspect be for this coaching staff?
Most important. Teaching first, communicating second, because you're not the one great thing about good teachers, and we all been to school. Now, when I was in school, I didn't always listen to the teacher and then always think that the teacher was telling me the right things, which they were. But a good teacher is a good communicator. And again, a good teacher also does this, especially in football. Whatever it is you're trying to get done with a player, if you're a good teacher, if you want him to go out there and you want him to be able to run this route this way, or you want him to be able to throw this ball that way, then the reflection of him doing that is a reflection of you getting him to do what you want done. And to me, I learned this a long time ago from a guy named Bill Oliver, who was an Alabama football coach. He was my head coach at UT Chattanooga when I coached there. He says, David, coaching is simply this: getting guys to do what you want them to do. And then what they do and what you see on video and on film is a reflection of you. So you understand, if he's giving that ball away, the reflection there is that you're not doing a good enough job with him to keep him from giving that ball away. So you better figure out a way to make sure he doesn't give that ball away. And Drew, that's teaching. That's teaching to me. And those are the kind of guys that we're going to have on this football staff. And they're all over this place. You have some guys on this football staff right now that have been very good teachers. You know, they're very good teachers.
Yeah, you mentioned teaching, and you mentioned the value of holding on to the football. Deshaun Watson was very good at that last season. Didn't throw too many interceptions, didn't fumble the ball away much. You mentioned him a moment ago and his role in this offense. What's the limit for him, if there is one, and how impressive and how attractive is he to have as a quarterback for you as a head coach?
Having a guy like that taking the snaps, always, Drew, no matter who you're playing, gives you a chance to win. And when you're playing football, the way he tried to play football this past year, now, I know there was only 4 wins. There could have been 5 or 6 more wins in games that they played in, simply because having him back there and him being an extension of what we are as coaches in playing winning football, that you always got a chance. It didn't happen as much as they wanted it to happen last year. But with a guy like that, now you always have a chance as long as he's playing winning football. And winning football, Drew, is not about how many yards you threw. It's not about how many touchdowns you threw. It is about when you threw them. It is about not giving the ball away. It is about involving everybody. He's the engine. He's the one that gets it started. He touches that ball 90% of the time that thing is snapped on offense. And so he's the engine that drives it. And when that engine is doing the right thing, playing winning football, and everybody else around him is playing winning football, you always have a chance to win. I've looked at a couple of games that they played last year that could have went the other way, that didn't go the other way. And one of the reasons that we probably went the other way was a football wasn't protected in a particular situation, or a play wasn't made when a play needed to be made that could have affected the outcome of a ball game. And Drew, when you're playing the game, you never know when that's going to be. And you don't know until after the game when that play is. And let me give you a classic example of that happened this year when I was with the Ravens and we were playing. A lot of people were in the game because it was one of them games where Lamar Jackson thought he was Superman when he left and everybody thought he was gone, and he came back out on the football field against the Cleveland Browns. Is that in that game, I happened to coach a young man, Marquise Brown, there. That's a really good player for us there.
Hollywood, yeah.
Hollywood Brown. Now, he ain't Hollywood to me. He was Marquise Brown, because I told him he ain't caught enough touchdowns and he ain't won enough ball games for us to be called Hollywood. But point being was he had dropped 3 balls in that ball game, 2 for first downs, critical. He comes to the sideline. It's one of those games where we had a 14-point lead, then we're tied. Then we got another 14-point lead, then we're tied. And then all of a sudden we get up against 7, and then all of a sudden it's tied again. So now during that ball game, it became one of those games where probably whoever had the ball last was going to have a chance to win the game. And he had struggled. And in his mind, all he was thinking about was what had happened before. He had dropped balls. He had done this. So on the sideline, again, this is why, Drew, they call us coach, okay? He was on the sideline, and I knew he's thinking about what had already happened. We're playing a football game. The game ain't over until till the clock goes 0-0-0. And that's all he was thinking about. In order for him, and he's a young kid, in order for him to understand that the game is not over, you may be put in a position again to have to make a play. Lo and behold, at the end of that ball game, a ball got thrown to him. Lamar comes in after that play. Trace McSorley, a backup quarterback, had come in and made a big-time play to give us the ball. All of a sudden, it's 4th down and 10 or whatever it is. He comes back in the game. He and Marquise Brown, you notice I didn't say Hollywood. He and Marquise Brown connected on a play that ended up being the difference in the game. That kid would have never been able to make that play if we hadn't have got him to understand is that we'll talk tomorrow about those drop balls you had. Today is not over. You got to understand that we still got a chance to win this game. And the point, Drew, there was this. It wasn't about him at that time. He was making it about him. Right. It wasn't about him. And that's our philosophy that we have here. It's about us. We still got a chance to win this ball game. Get your head right and hope that we can put you in a position again to make a play to win the game. Lo and behold, it happened and it went. And that's what we're all about. That's what we'll be all about. And you never know when that's going to happen. You never know what play it is. You never know when it's going to happen. But you have to have that mindset and attitude. And that's the kind of thing that we're going to try to establish here.
In that situation you just described with Brown, that happens to every single NFL team in every single NFL game, and some handle it well, some don't. So with all that in mind and knowing that the roster changes because of the draft, because of free agency and so on, what's your impression of the guys that you pretty much have a handle on are going to be here and going to be on the field in 2021 for the Texans? What do you think of this roster?
Well, I don't know it like I will know it because I haven't looked at it in detail as Nick and the guys that have been here before in detail. Mm-hmm. But let me tell you this, not specifically about this roster, but I'm going to tell you specifically about what I feel like about in the league and everybody's roster. Drew, every team in this league has talent. Every team. Some has more than others. Some teams have a bunch of talent that aren't winners. And this is why they're not winners. They're not a team. There are teams in this league that some people don't feel like are just overly talented, but they're a team. And that being said, is that regardless of who we put out there on the football field, if they understand about being selfless, being a team guy and understanding that it's a 4-quarter ball game. And if you're playing winning football, and most games in this league, Drew, when it's close, goes down to the last 4 minutes of a ball game. And if you're right there in the last 4 minutes of a ball game, your chances are as good as the other team of having a chance to win. So it doesn't matter who we put out there. When we put out there and you have a young man behind the center like we got here, anything can happen as long as you're doing the right thing. And as long as we got them molded enough that, listen, we got to do the right things. You got to play winning football for 4 quarters. If you do, you're going to have a chance to win, regardless of whether you're playing with a Pro Bowler or you're playing with a guy that's just a really good player, but you always have a chance. And that's how I look at this roster. I look at this roster here as saying, if we get this roster and we get these players to playing the way winning football, we'll have a chance to win football games. How many? I don't know, but we'll have a chance to win. And we'll set the groundwork for what we need to set in order moving forward to be the kind of team that we want to be.
All right, we'll close with this one. We heard you're a big boxing fan during your press conference. So
huge.
So of all the boxing greats that you've seen or heard about or watched, which one do you most want your Houston Texans to be like?
Muhammad Ali. And I'm going to tell you why. You always heard him boast and talk and do all of this about who he was, about being the greatest. That had nothing to do with his boxing skills. At this time during boxing, that was all about promoting boxing, promoting himself. Behind the scenes, nobody worked harder. Nobody wanted to be a world champion more than he did. Nobody put forth the time that he did to do that. And when you look at all the world champions that have been world champions for a long time, they all have that common thing. Forget about the outside stuff. And I'm going to use you another example, not with boxing, but with football. I'm going to use Terrell Owens as an example. Terrell Owens is one of those guys that you remember everybody called him T.O. He was not T.O. on our football team when I had him in Philadelphia. He was Terrell Owens. T.O. was that guy that was sitting there talking to you. T.O. was that guy that when the media or whatever came, did his thing and whatnot. But on the field, in practice, in the dressing room, he was the most unbelievable worker I've ever been around. And he was a great example for the young guys, which helped me as a coach. The most important thing with him was he told me one time, and this is what I feel like, Drew, that validated me as a coach in the NFL. He told me one time he'd already been a Pro Bowler for a number of years. He'd already been caught all the balls that you'd ever want to catch. But the one thing that he hadn't had, being a San Francisco 49er, was he didn't have a world championship. He hadn't won a world championship. And then he realized the most important thing is being a champion. He came to us in Philadelphia because Andy Reid convinced him that we had a quarterback here in Donovan McNabb that could help us get there. And you could be a part of that. And when he came because the most important thing to him was not being a Pro Bowler, not catching 100 passes, which he's done before, not catching 20 passes in a game, which he has done. It was winning. And that's a champion. That right there, I got from boxing, because all the world champions that I've ever known, and I even go back right now to another one. People talk about Floyd Mayweather, Floyd Money Mayweather. Floyd Money Mayweather is a gimmick. Floyd Mayweather is a world champion because Floyd Mayweather knows how to box. Floyd Mayweather knows how to play and knows that. Why am I getting that? I'm getting that because I make the sacrifice and I do what I need to do to get it. And that's why you see champions for a long time become champions, because all the outside stuff is a little different deal. But you have to be a special player, a special individual to be able to transfer that to when you're wanting to be that. Because if they weren't world champions, nobody would listen to them. Nobody would care what they say. Who are they? He's a world champion. That's why when he says, I'm going to knock you out and I'm going to do this, not only is it what they're saying when they do that, Drew, is they're promoting themselves. They're adding more money to the closed circuit. They're adding more money to the pay-per-view because they get more. But the most important thing was being a world champion and being a champion. And that's the same thing. And that's what Terrell was. And all people had this perception of him. Inside the building, players respected him. They respected what he was all about. And he helped us, because of that, get to a Super Bowl that had we won that Super Bowl, and you may have heard in my press conference, Nick was at New England when that happened. Mm-hmm. Had we won that game that day, he would have been the most valuable player. Having had a foot injury that said you would never be able to make it and play in a Super Bowl, that young man did everything possible to get himself back there to play in a Super Bowl and had one well of a game that gave us a chance. I'm going back to what I told you earlier about playing winning football. That gave us a chance to win a Super Bowl with what a champion is all about.
Head coach David Culley, I have many, many more questions, but we have no more time. But it's great.
Thank you.
I appreciate talking with you, and we can't wait to see you and the Texans
looking
come out
forward
swinging
to it,
for a championship. Sound good?
Thank you. That sounds good. Thank you, Drew.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to know when we post new content.